Okay, Viking Justice 15, this is symbolic. A friend asked that I respond to your video, which is entitled, "White People You Are Not Responsible For, ... It appears that you watched a video called The Origins of White People, and whoever made the video, the person who made it linked Scandinavian religion to the religion of East Indians. And you took offense at this, and this triggered in you a response. It's interesting because you say, well, I'm not prejudiced, but you take a video that was made by one individual and then you hold responsible for that video all black folk, and you address your video to all black folk. So you're stereotyping, radically stereotyping. And it's funny because you want to wash your hands of any responsibility for certain things, but then you stereotype and hold all black folk responsible for a video made by one person. So you may want to think about that. You know, before Christianity, well, let me start this way. Linguists have pieced together what they theoretically call the Indo-European peoples. Now, it's an abstraction, the Indo-European peoples, and you have two parts of that: Indo, which is the region around India, and European, which is basically Europe, right? It's a linguistic construct. They studied all of the different languages, and they were able to, using various techniques, link the languages to come up with a common ancestor language, which is theoretical, called Indo-European. And then from that, it's hypothesized that perhaps these were a people, you know, maybe they had a common culture, what have you. And then in that case, if you assume that, then you can also hypothesize that they had a common religion. But let me read you from the Dictionary of Northern Mythology, which includes the Norse area, Sweden, Norway, the areas you mentioned, some of the pre-Christian, parts of the pre-Christian religion. We have here Glaumar. Glaumar was the name of a giant in the Pulur. Okay, so we have a giant. Gleipnir was the fetter with which the wolf Fenrir can finally be bound by the Aesir after two other fetters have been broken. All right. Okay, then we have Glenner, the husband of Sol, the personified sun. And we have, a silver-colored residence. We have a dwarf. We have the name of a giantess. We have a goddess. We have Glabakr, the name of one of the snakes which live under the roots of the world ash, Yggdrasil. This is the world tree, kind of like the tree of life in Norse mythology. So before Christianity, you did have this, what now would look, I'm sure to you, like a very foreign religion. But you can see that this religion, these elements of this religion, may indeed be linked to other religions, perhaps in the area of northern India. Okay, I had to say in another video I made tonight to someone else, please read extensively, read history extensively, read anthropology extensively, read about various human cultures and the different historical epochs, because you're flattening out and mixing different historical epochs. Let me show you. You talk about your ancestors. Well, first you say they marched into Africa. You know, the Norse didn't march into Africa. They traveled on boats, as I'm sure you know. So you know, you actually present a very cartoonish sort of history of the interaction of the Norse with the Africans. Let me show you some of the sagas. Some of these are tremendous sagas. Egil's saga, fascinating saga, Icelandic. Njal saga. This is the Vinland saga with the Norse discovery of the North American continent. Hrafnel's saga. We got the Orkneyinga saga for the Orkney Islands. Many, many, many sagas. Many, many, many sagas. All fascinating. I have never seen an Africa saga. if the Norse during the Dark Ages had ever gone to Africa, I'm sure there would be an Africa saga. Okay, and as far as I know, it does not exist. So when we talk about the Middle Ages, when you seem to like the word slaughter, when there was, they were out doing raids, and I could tell you sometime why they were doing raids. There's an economic reason for it. If they were doing it during that time, there would have been a saga. Now, after the Middle Ages, eventually we had the rise of the modern states and the modern nations. This was probably in the 1600s, after the Renaissance. Okay, now then, the Europeans had guns, metallic guns, which once they were improved, became very effective weapons. You might call them superior weapons. Not a superior culture, superior weapons, which gave them an advantage in war and in killing and what have you. Now I gotta say, you're saying that when the Vikings marched into Africa, the Africans were heavily into cannibalism. Just sounds like a cartoon to me. It does not sound like valid history. Now, if you can back that up and you can show me historical documents that show that there was cannibalism in Africa at whatever that time was, you seem to have flattened out history into one merged area, then I'll take a look at that. But I just do not believe it. There were many great civilizations in Africa, many great and strong civilizations, and in fact, the Europeans never got very far past the coast because the cultures were so strong, and so unified. So what you have is your own little modern mythology, which I must say is cartoonish, and you really should dispel that myth because it's completely false. Okay, it's completely false. You say that people are still into cannibalism. I have seen no documentation to back that up whatsoever. If you can provide that documentation, that will be interesting. And then I will match it with other documentation, which is common knowledge, like the Donner Party. So that's the story there. Now, you have a complete misunderstanding of what affirmative action is. First of all, you talk about the government forcing people to use status quos. I think you mean quotas. Status quo just means the state as it is. When things are as they always are, you say it's status quo. Quota is a specific number of some kind that has to be met. Affirmative action is not based on quotas. Quotas are unlawful according to the Supreme Court, and it has been this way for decades. Okay, so affirmative action is not based on quotas. That, please, read some of the affirmative action law, or get a good book on social justice or on affirmative action equal opportunity, and you'll see that it is not at all based on quotas. And the emotion, I'm sure this video upset you, and I've seen provocative videos as well that are made to upset people. But what value you can get out of this, Sarah, I believe her name is Sarah, is studying your own response. If you are responding so strongly to this, it means, well, one, it means that you identify with being white. Okay, now white's a color. All right, people are not really white. White is a color, not a person. All right. The other thing is, it has a lot of connotations that you really should deconstruct because you've been programmed to think this. Truly speaking, it doesn't really exist. It exists it exists psychologically and sociologically, but physically it does not really exist. But it'll take me too long to explain that. I'm running out of time. If you're going to identify with your Scandinavian ancestors, your northern ancestors, and you want to claim credit in your identity and feel linked to that, you're going to have to take the good with the bad. You're going to have to accept their intense involvement in the slave trade, their intense involvement in exploiting, slaughtering, and murdering other cultures. You can't just take one, You just can't. You got to accept them both. That's the way it is. Or you can be a free individual and determine your own identity and remove whatever programming you can identify. And I think that's really what you should go for. It's much better. All right. Okay. Take care. Bye bye.